I am an Iranian national. I live in Glasgow now, and I was in Iran last Christmas.
Okay.
And my family is still there, actually. I would like to say that no, I'm not in support of the regime. No, 90% of people would like to see a regime change, but no one likes to see it at the cost of innocent civilians dying in Iran.
But I mean, you can't do it otherwise, can you? I don't think you can. I mean, maybe you can, but even when the protests reach the streets, as they did in 2019 and 2022, it leaves hundreds of innocent civilians dead.
Exactly, and that's my point. It is difficult for it to happen organically without some external pressure. But even with some external pressure, I still believe before a regime change, the Ayatollahs will make a bloodbath in Iran on their own people before it happens.
So they wouldn't sort of, board the metaphorical plane to Moscow or wherever it would be that they'd find support and succor like other despots, like the last Ukrainian leader?
Absolutely not.
Or the Syrian, or Bashar Assad, actually. And in fact, Bashar Assad proves your point in a way. The amount of Syrian blood that was spent and spilt before he fled the scene like a coward is
how long did that take?
Biblical. So, okay, so how, I mean, and this is entirely well, maybe not, because you can't do opinion polling in Iran, which is kind of part of the point of this conversation, isn't it? But how do you get a handle on how widespread support for the regime would be? How I mean, what would your take on that be, your personal take?
My personal take is that if you went around Iran and asked people, their number one priority it will be the financial situation and the hyperinflation and the whole economic point of view before we get into any of the, obviously those are important as well, women's rights, human rights, freedom of speech. But everyone's number one priority right now and concern is the financial situation, because it's awful right now. And,
That is true in countries that aren't theocracies as well, though. So it doesn't really answer my question.
Exactly.
What? I mean, how... If the economic situation was relatively healthy, would the regime be popular?
Still not popular, but then you can make the argument whether if the economic situation was healthy, would people still want to see a regime change or not?
Well, that's the question I'm asking. I did acknowledge you might not be able to answer it, so I can hardly tell you off.
I mean, who's to say that after a regime change, we're not going to be in a situation like Afghanistan, like Libya, like... That's
like Iraq. I mean, you'd have another ISIS growing up in the vacuum that was created by regime change in Iran. What about my somewhat lazy suggestion that that there are parallels to be drawn with the Taliban, with the regime currently in Iran and the Taliban, and therefore why wouldn't you want to get rid of it? Would you buy that?
It's not lazy at all, and I agree with you. I mean, you can't guarantee that we won't be in a worse situation than we are right now. I mean, look around you in the Middle East, you know.
Yeah, I hadn't forgotten that because I referenced it, but to hear you say it actually just in such simple language, you couldn't guarantee that you wouldn't be in a worse situation than you are now. To which the answer becomes, it's not for anybody outside Iran to decide to roll the dice.
At the moment, right now, 1 minute I'm happy that Israel attacked us.
Right.
And it is mad. You wouldn't find any other nation, any patriot person that say, oh, I'm actually happy that another country attacked us.
Gosh.
But
historically you would. I'm not picking a fight. I'm just thinking about the glee with which the statues of Saddam Hussein were pulled down towards the end of the Second Gulf War. So the notion of a liberating enemy, which, to tie your call in with the last one, with Sina's, is, of course, you can't really have a liberating army without civilian death, can you? So that's why it's mad to celebrate it, because you're celebrating something that has caused the death of Iranians.
Exactly. So, yeah, at the moment, 1 minute I'm happy, 1 minute I'm upset because I have family, friends over there. They are under the bomb. I'm here in safety. But then again, people say, oh, it's our country, our infrastructure. But can I also point out another thing? In the past months, maybe you know about it, because of all the sanctions and everything, and also the fact that the regime was sending all the money, finances, resources from Iran outside instead of giving it to the Iranian people. For the past couple of months, every single day there was power outage. Water was cut. There was no enough gas. And this is from a country we have the highest amount of any resources that you can think of. And then the economy is completely collapsing. The inflation is to the roof. So if the Israel is right now attacking our infrastructure, it's fine by me. Because those infrastructure, even up to now, it wasn't in the service of the people. It was for the government financing, I don't know, all their proxies over the world and provoking other countries.
And to tie your contribution to this hour with the conversation that we all had in the last hour, you look at what Netanyahu has done in Gaza and you still welcome his intervention in your own country.
That's not an easy question to answer. You see, no, I'm going to give you one.
You're telling me I wouldn't even try, Nova, and you don't have to, but I've asked it now.
No, because you see, first of all, the conflict between Israel and Palestinian people, it's a long history, right?
Of course, yes.
But what my opinion is, what happened on 7th of October was absolutely... I don't know how to say it, an atrocity,
yes,
I would say.
Yes, of course.
And if a country attack me like the way Hamas attacked Israel and do whatever they did on 7th of October, I would flatten the other country. No excuses. Because the level of brutality and savagery they did on 7th of October, it was beyond war crimes. There is no justification for that.
Except it was undertaken by a terrorist organisation, not a sovereign country. So, and of course, the leader of Hamas was indicted for war crimes, but died before he could be put on trial. But you can't kill 2 million people in retaliation for the murder of 2,000.
No, but then again, the unfortunate
thing... There's no
thing...
then again there. We're going to fall out. You can't kill 2 million people in retaliation for the murder of 2,000.
No, you can't, and I agree with that, but that's the ugly side of the war. And also, one thing...
So Iran has now attacked Israel. You're in favour of Iran being wiped out?
I would say Iran give the excuse to Israel. For 47 years...
Yeah, but under your own analysis, you said if we were attacked like that... Iran has tried to visit terrible carnage upon Israel. It hasn't been as, quotes, successful, end quotes, as Hamas was on October the 7th. But you're in favour of the flattening of Iran now, to use your own words.
Not really, because we really didn't attack Israel or didn't do all those things. But that's, again, also true. Our proxy, not our proxy, the government proxy, did all sorts of crimes in the region and to Israel.
Right.
So, of course, I'm not happy if Israel completely destroyed my country. But then again, we are a country that we don't have a government.
Okay. I'm not sure I've heard the words "but then again" deployed in quite such a, what's the word I would want, sticky territory.
I think it's important to explore the sort of, well, this is simplifying it a bit, but the three fundamental pillars of the regime, that the silos in which they're active. I would say the first is this kind of, it is a mafia regime. It's the best way to describe it. It is a mafia. It is a massive racketeering business worth trillions of dollars. They embezzle a huge amount of money, assets, resources into their own pockets and into the sort of pathways of their regional influence, which I'll come to next, and that's the next sort of pillar of their activity, that regional influence. So the support both financially and in terms of resources, whether it be military or natural resources, of extremist groups and don't forget that the Islamic Republic in Iran, the Iranian regime, is in itself a terrorist group. It is a fundamental religious Shia Islamic terrorist group that does not represent Iranian people, who are generally very secular, very liberal, and not particularly religious. We are inherently Zoroastrian. We are not Muslims, generally speaking. So these groups that the Iranian regime supports, whether it be Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, through these groups, they propagate their sort of extremist Shia fundamental principles or lack thereof principles, and they engage in their proxy wars, and therefore continuing to this drain of natural resources, wealth, and assets, and energy and effort that should be going into investing into the Iranian economy, infrastructure, its youth. All of that is being redirected and stolen and taken away from the Iranian people. So it's very, very important when I've listened to your show and LBC for years, and when you listen to people speak, or whether it be on LBC or any other outlet, people often tend to synonymize Iran and the Islamic Republic, or Iran, the nation of Iran, the people of Iran. And let's not forget, Iran is the single oldest continuous living nation state. 2,500 years we have existed as a state. And it is imperative that the regime is not confused with Iran or its people. One does not represent the other.
Yes.
And the third, and this is probably the most important, and this is why I have my opinions and the Iranians have their opinions, and there is a diverse set of opinions about this conflict and the action that needs to be taken, and regime change that almost all Iranians want. But how does it look, and how will it come internally? Will it come externally, or a combination of the two? And what is it, through force and war, or is it through I don't know, intelligence agencies such as like the 1953 coup, and which happened without much fighting. So the third pillar of the Islamic Republic, the mafia regime that has taken our country hostage, is the control of its people, clamping down on dissent, on defiance, and removal and of true democratic values and basic human rights, whether it be freedom of speech, freedom of expression, things like music. In the last few days, your listeners might have seen on the BBC, was one of the most well-read articles of the day, that the Iranian regime has once again banned dog walking throughout Iran and is clamping down on that. So something as basic as that, which brings me up on the point of the Islamic Republic and Islam in general being the complete antithesis, in my opinion, of what it is to be Persian. Yes. And Persianism and Islam are two completely opposing ideas. And this is my opinion. I don't truly believe that somebody can be both, because the inherent values, and I speak perhaps mostly of Shia Islam and the version of Islam that this Islamic regime of Iran has kind of developed over the last 47 years. If you look at, for example, dogs, I'm a dog lover, I've had dogs all my life. Dogs are a sacred pillar of Zoroastrianism, of the first monotheistic religion that came from Persia about 4,500 years ago, and is perhaps not a set of principles or not a set of commandments, but more values to live by. And that in itself is just one example that I use of how this clampdown on this maltreatment of dogs, for example, goes against all Persian values. And that goes back to this old adage of, you can tell how civilized a nation is by how it treats its women, its animals, or any more vulnerable people. And
theocracies are generally going to be the opposite of that model. I don't want to run out of time, but I do want to know. Yeah. And again, I don't want to oversimplify the nuance that you've provided or break it. But the situation is so awful that even if it's instigated by Israel, we would welcome regime change. How widespread is that view?
Well, this is where you've seen in the last few days, it really differs between people. You have the kind of the monarchist.
So I need a show in Iran really to get a proper handle on this, and of course that isn't going to happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think even from that show, if you have a 3-hour show at the beginning, people's opinions might differ by the end of it. But I think people, in a nutshell, people want the regime gone, perhaps not at all costs, but you know, I think we are very open to exploring options.
The fact is that I think about the current situation is in Iran. I think that we have always been in a war. Our Iranian people have always been in a war. I totally understand people talking about inflation and stuff like that.
Yes.
But it goes way beyond it. And if you think about it, the regime in Iran, well, I don't say that people have always been like this, but I have lived in Iran for more than 3 decades, and I have seen people who were mostly religious people, and they were okay with this regime.
Yeah.
During so many years, they have changed because they have seen lies, and they notice that the lives of people is not important for this regime at all. If you have a look on different protests and the movements that have been happening in Iran in 2019, 2022 and 2009, all of these, many people were killed. Nobody is ever going to know the exact number of people because they just don't let people to make other people in the whole world be informed about it. It's just everybody is so oppressed there. And yeah, it's like everybody is suffering from the fear. If you're a journalist there, and even if you're a journalist outside the Iran, you always have to be really careful because they are that brave that they can threaten you by the lives of your family there.
I think we spoke to Paul, didn't we, about this, Paul Caruana Galizia not long ago about the evidence he'd unearthed of dissidents in this country coming to being targeted, if you like, even in this country by agents of the Iranian regime. I don't want to run out of time, Masih, and you paint a hideous picture. How hideous would it have to be before a significant portion of the Iranian population would even contemplate the possibility that Benjamin Netanyahu might be the man to start the regime change?
Well, honestly, I think the war is the ugliest thing that can happen in any country. When it happened first, and they actually went for some of Iranian military people, we thought that, okay, it might be the start of change. But at the moment, there are some people being killed, like normal civilians.
Yes.
And our family are back there. We are so worried about them. We are worried about people in Israel that might be killed as well.
Yes.
It's about human being. But the thing is that I know that even if this regime is going to say that, okay, this number of people have been killed, innocent people have been killed, they're just using it. They don't care about the lives of people because even in the past, they have been killing people themselves.
I mean, it is one of those conversations where, oddly, the extremes seem in danger of meeting, and you realise that the huge portions of the ordinary people are nowhere near either extreme, as in the people ordering and undertaking the killing. But it's all a bit John Lennon, isn't it, Masih? The hope that everyone can live in peace and harmony.